Today I have one of my mentors with me. Someone has been an anchor in this work for over, I'm not going to date him. I think he started when he was about 5. At least 30 years, and not just serving Ward 8, but serving children and families throughout the District of Columbia. I'm so pleased that as I started this journey, he was with me, mentoring me and giving me the confidence that I needed to make sure that I would be one of the best executive directors Far Southeast has ever seen. Coming from one of the first executive directors, that mean a lot. So I would like to welcome my friend, big brother, uncle, sometimes feels like a dad, Mr. Thomas Gore, to one of our very first episodes here. Mr. Gore, it's been a while. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Good. So I just want to chat with you a little bit. I think it's so important. Today I had a wonderful experience of doing some trainings. And a part of the training is understanding the history so you can see how we're moving forward. Okay. More often than not, we forget that, right? Yes. We jump right in and we start doing our work, and we really don't understand how it all started and who are some of the great people that made it possible for an individual like myself to come from upper Northwest to over the Southeast and fall in love serving people under your tutelage. So I want to give our audience just some background on how this organization started, the work, the history, and what makes it so rich, being able to walk into our own building, that it was because of you at that time as the president that signed the document. So we'll be one of the first Black nonprofits actually owning property in Ward 8, specifically Anacostia. So let's talk about the history. Tell us a little bit about it.
First, I'd like to say an immediate change to Far Southeast Family Strengthening Collaborative is you being at the helm. You bring such dynamic energy and a spirit of we can do it, you know. And when we have to pivot, we will pivot, but we will make it happen, and the families will be safe, and they will be productive, and the community will be helping us to do that. So I salute you, as a leader now in bringing that kind of dynamic leadership to the position of Executive Director of the Far Southeast Family Strengthening Collaborative. Reflecting back, 25 years ago?
25 years ago.
Child and Family Services Administration at that time was under a receivership. Dr. Jerry Miller was the head of the receivership. He had been known across the country as a maverick. He would come into systems and shake them up and turn them around positively. And so at the time, the city was faced with an unusual amount of children and families going into the child welfare system all across the city. Unfortunately, Far Southeast had the highest percentage of families and children going into the child welfare system, 40%. And what Dr. Miller did is he says, well, let's put the responsibility of making the change on the community. And so he sent his team out into the community to talk to community leaders about how could they help Child and Family Services Administration turn that around, make families safe, make sure they was well off, you know, that they weren't neglected, and they were thriving. And he contacted one of our community leaders then was Jim Banks.
Wow.
Mr. Banks.
Awesome individual.
Yeah. Matter of fact, he grew up in Anacostia. He was the first executive director of the United Planning Organization. He was responsible for that community in Southwest where you see high-scale apartments and housing, and you see affordable housing, and you see houses that are supplemented, and it works. Yes. So he had a hand in that. But anyway, he came to Jim Banks and said, you guys need to pull the community together, and you all need to solve this problem. And the first meeting was held at what's now the Max Robinson Center.
Okay.
Back then, it was the home of the Anacostia Community Partnership for the Prevention of Homelessness.
It sure was, yes.
That's a name for you.
It sure
But and so we met there, probably about 25 people.
Wow.
Around the table.
25? I didn't know it was that many initially.
Yes, the initial meeting. And when Mr. Banks reached out into the community and he tapped those people who knew other people in the community and called a meeting, people showed up.
Okay.
That's the type of leader he was. He didn't depend on himself to do it, but he knew other people who could bring together
Put the
that number of
accountability
people.
on us.
And sitting there, Dr. Miller's team came out and gave us the data on child abuse and neglect in the far southeast community, specifically Ward 8. And it was, I know a lot of us took it personally, that this was going on around us. We lived in this community. And
you were a social worker at that time.
I was a social worker. I had just come out of, actually, I had just, in 94, I had just come out of the Howard University School of Social Work.
Okay.
And I was working on a violence prevention program at Kramer Middle School at that time. We was trying to reduce violence and the use of substance abuse and other drugs in the community. I think it's one of the programs that was evaluated in the District of Columbia, and that evaluation still stands today. But anyway, he called all of us together, and we were heartbroken that families were going into the child welfare system at an alarming rate, and that children were being neglected and abused, and that it existed right under our noses. And so after they left, we agreed to meet to come up with a plan on how we were going to address this.
Who were some of the we's? Who actually joined you?
Jim Banks, Brenda Jones,
Okay.
Tony Thomas, Joyce Thomas.
Joyce Scott. Is it Joyce Scott too?
I don't think she was at that
Okay.
meeting.
Okay.
Let's see who else. Brenda Richardson.
Was that when Sherilyn Bobo, was she at the table at that
Charlene
time?
Bobo was
Okay.
there.
What about Brenda Donald? Was she at the table at that
No,
time?
Brenda Donald was not
Okay.
at that time. She
Okay.
came along later on.
Was Mr. Kinlow or Mr. Gray?
No.
None of those guys? Okay.
Gray wasn't there. Gray came on later on as
Okay.
well. Miss Farrell.
Oh, man, Dorothea Farrell, Berry
yeah,
Farm. That's right.
Farrell. Let's see. I think Dr. Bovell and
Okay.
Dr. Hamilton.
Wow.
And you guys better get this now because
Right.
between COVID and another year, it's slipping. So it's best to get it now. But anyway, those were some of the people there.
Okay.
And other names will come as we go through this.
Yeah.
Feeling that, we sat there and decided that we were going to meet on Tuesdays. And we started meeting there at the Max Robinson, what's now the Max Robinson Center. And then we moved our meetings to Parklands Community Center.
Yes.
Brenda Jones's
That's
location.
Right. That's right.
And we would meet there every Tuesday from about 3 to 5, 3 to 6. And the basic principles were the community said, okay, here's an opportunity where resources will come to the community and we'll have an opportunity to make change to better the lives of our residents. But we don't want the money going to organizations the way it usually does. We don't want all the decision makings to come from nonprofit organizations. We want the decisions to come from the community.
Wow.
Those were the voices of people like Catherine, Michael Johnson.
Yes.
Brenda, I can't think of their last names.
Yeah, no, I got them. I know. Brenda Richardson.
Not Brenda Richardson.
Not Jones either.
Sure, Brenda.
Oh, Miss Brenda Williams.
Brenda Williams.
Yeah, okay.
Barbara Shorter.
Yes.
Those voices were loud, and they
wow.
were saying traditionally what happens is that the resources go to these nonprofits, and then they decide on how things go.
So Barbara Shorter, though, interesting enough, her grandson,
yes,
Larry, works with us. One of our literally, yep.
Wow.
Yep, carrying on his
That's
legacy.
some great lineage.
Yes.
Barbara was a community advocate and
warrior.
activist.
Yes, she was. Couldn't mistreat the babies with her.
And they kept us on that principle that it has to be built utilizing the voices of the people on the ground.
Wow.
The people at the community level. And so the decisions have to come from the community level, and that some of the leadership in terms of committees had to be represented at the community level, and that we have to use the talents and skills of everybody.
Wow.
So that meant that we started out uh, conducting a survey. Vincent Gray, we was in his office at 2 o'clock in the morning.
At that time, what was he doing?
He was the executive director of Covenant House,
Okay.
Washington.
Okay.
And we was in his office till about 2 in the morning putting together this community survey, which was conducted by
Gofferson.
Catherine. No, we used Communities That Care
Okay.
and Building Communities from the Inside Out. Communities That Care
Learning.
was
I thought that
Catalina
was
and
earlier.
Hawkins.
Okay. Okay.
And I can't remember the authors of Building Communities from the Inside Out, but we used their work and pulled some information from their work, and we did other research, and we came up with a survey to find out what people and what organizations perform the best work in the community.
Got it.
Like, who's the best person to get the word out?
That's right.
Who's the best person to provide housing? Who's the best person to provide social services, mental health, medical health, family support? Who were the best organizations? Who were the best people that provided those services? And so those were the people that we would go to get information on how to build the collaborative. And that meant the beauty of that is that utilizing a lot of the people at the community level who traditionally were not in those conversations when the money went to organizations.
That was a real grassroots approach.
It
Starting
was
right there with the people.
even
who matter
down
the most.
to the structure.
Right.
The reason why at that time the executive director had to live in Ward 8.
Wow.
The head of the finance committee had to live in Ward 8. The number of the finance committee was 9. You had to have at least 5 from Ward 8. So everything to make sure that there was a voice at the community level was put into the structure of the collaborative from its board.
That's real building power.
Yeah, if you think about it, and so all along there was focus on 2 words, and those 2 words still exist today: collaborative and family. If you think about it, at the top it used to be the Healthy Families, Thriving Communities Collaborative.
That's right.
Families Collaboratives.
That's right.
And if you look at all the 8 collaboratives, one time there were 8 collaboratives.
That's right.
All of them had family and collaboratives. What that meant is that your work was done in collaboration.
That's right.
There was no 3 people sitting in a room talking about this is the program we will develop. It came from a collaborative discussion
With the community.
and the work came from there, and it was driven by folks at the community level.
Wow.
It wasn't easy.
Yeah.
You know, some days you say, I don't think I'm gonna go back to the next meeting. You know, but we everybody stayed connected because we had in front of us that 40% of our families were in the child welfare system.
In Ward 8.
In Ward 8.
Wow.
So
That's
that
a
was
huge group.
held in front of us. And so that's the thing that touched, I think, everybody's heart and kept us at the table with the heated discussions, with the good discussions, and then coming around to the point where, you know, we began to move from planning to actually implementing. So some of the, and it included not, you know, people at the community level. It included ministers. It included the business community. It included a school community. Dr. Lavdina Orr, from back then, she was working with Children's Hospital. She was a major figure.
I remember.
In the development of the collaboratives, because one of the things we wanted to do, once we got the data, the statistical data about the number of neglect and abused families, we formed what we call info sessions. And we went to the community to engage them by showing them what is abuse and what is neglect.
Yeah.
And we did a shock
We
presentations.
We still do it.
We showed them this is abuse. And people broke down, people cried, people left, people became sick. But we were trying to get everybody on the same page that we have to do something about this.
That's right.
And some people could see the data and say, we need to do something about it. It took pictures for other people to move to do something about it. And so, you know, that whole concept of the community drives the collaborative's work. The decisions are made at the community level. Even the programming, where the 5 family support centers were put.
Tell us a little bit about that. So, how did you guys get the very first opportunity to receive some funding? Because all of this work was being done primarily just because it was important,
I
and
don't
you
want
guys
to cuss,
cared.
but we fought like hell. It wasn't easy because we had did the planning grant, and then things get slow. But we there were 4 directors at that. We didn't have any directors at that time. We had coordinators.
Okay.
There was a coordinator for Columbia Heights Shaw.
Okay.
There was a coordinator for East River.
Okay.
There was a coordinator for Edgewood, Brooklyn, and a coordinator for Far Southeast. And that was me. Edgewood, Brooklyn was Lavinia Williams.
Yes.
East River was Jackie Henry.
Yep.
And Columbia Heights Shaw was Marianne Uquila.
Yep, that's right, Marianne.
And so we all took a role. Marianne's role was to connect us to the foundations.
That's right.
To get resources from the foundations and other things. Very powerful, strong.
Yeah, she definitely.
All of them were.
Yes.
Jackie Henry's role was to keep us connected with the social services, social work part of the work we had to do. And Lavinia was the policy person working with the agency and making this an effort that was not just an agency effort, not just a community effort, but it was a collaborative effort. And then my role was to chase the dollars, keep pounding to make sure that what was promised happened. And so we all, even though we had different roles, we supported each other in each other's role. And so we got the $60,000 planning grant.
$60,000.
$60,000 was the planning grant.
Wow.
And we used that money again to develop the initial survey that let us know where were the strengths in the community.
Okay.
And we paid people who were in the community to conduct those surveys. I remember Catherine, Michael, Barbara Shorter.
Yes.
All of them were the people who went out and interviewed executive directors of agencies and interviewed people. We used the money to, when we met, to provide, beverages. Because we met for 2-3 hours.
Yeah.
And so we used the money. Primarily, most of it went into the community.
That's right.
Paying the folks to do the assessment. And then we got to the point where we had developed how we wanted to implement our work. And I think our initial budget was $1.2 million.
Okay, across the whole city, correct?
No.
Just for Far Southeast?
That was just for Far Southeast.
Okay.
It was $1.2 million.
We had the greatest need.
We had the greatest need.
Wow.
And so we had I think we had the largest budget at that time.
Okay.
Now, my role at that time was more of a community person. There was another executive director. I was not the founding executive director. I can't think of the lady who served as the founding executive director, but I was third, actually.
Okay.
And so we started the implementation of our work, again, by getting the directives from the community as what we should do. And that was the charge.
So tell me, how did you guys get to, which is interesting, from there, one of the things that we recognize, and this is when I think you and I kind of started our beginnings together, is that we were having children in Ward 8 physically, emotionally neglected or abused. But one of the biggest issues was really around poverty. Yeah. How did you guys come to that? Because that's really how we've grown out as an organization.
We, Far Southeast, I was coming out of a project that was research-based. I had worked with a researcher for 5 years, one of the top researchers in the country, Dr. Gary Gottfredson.
Yes,
and,
yes.
When I became the executive director, I invited him to come in and look at our work.
Yes.
And he looked at our work across collaboratives. And he concluded that families were not abusing their children. Families were not leaving their homes and being homeless, and they weren't being hungry because of their choice. It was that they were just poor.
Yeah.
They couldn't make ends meet. And so the issue wasn't one of child abuse and neglect. It was one of poverty.
That's it.
And unless you address poverty, then you have families who are evicted from their homes, families who can't provide food for their children, families who couldn't provide medical care for their children. And so his research yielded that. And at the same time, we built the initial evaluation system.
Sure did, yeah.
That looked at, it was mostly a compliance evaluation system because we wanted to make sure we were doing the work we said we were going to do.
That's right.
And so we looked at all the compliance issues that we had in terms of how much time did it take us to meet the family after we received a call, and what was the initial intake, what was the work, did we document it, those kinds of things.
It was our initial ETO.
That's what we moved from that to ETO.
ETO, that's right.
I think a group went down to
Baltimore.
Raleigh, Durham.
We went to, that was after Baltimore. That was by the time you got me here.
Okay. Right. So you know the rest of the story. But that's how we really started focusing in on the work. Families were not just being neglectful.
That's right.
And they were not just being irresponsible. They just didn't have the means to make it work.
Seems like that was almost like such an aha moment. And even though we saw it from the perspective of really looking at how a community at that time was literally almost ostracized from the rest of the city and intentional. There's a documentary that our Mayor for Life talks about how it was intentional for people east of the Anacostia River to be in poverty. And seems to me the work that was done many years ago with the collaborative actually pinpointed that through the work with Dr. Gofferson, recognizing that it was really the financial challenge.
That's right.
And how did that pivot, how Far Southeast continued to engage from that point?
Well, I think one of the things is that we had built a community helping system that relied on people, organizations, businesses, churches, the medical community, and we knew who the experts were. So we didn't solving the problems wasn't one group of people. It wasn't one person. We went to the person who had the knowledge, the skills. For example, the reason why Far Southeast owns that building is because of Retta Gilliam.
That's it. That's right.
Retta Gilliam was awesome.
God knows she was.
She was a community developer. She was in a field where mostly was dominated by men.
Yep.
But she knew real estate and she knew community development, and she says we need to purchase our own place.
You guys had her interview me when I first came here.
With Retta?
Yep. Yeah, Harry had me interview with Retta.
I miss her to this day.
I do too.
That was a very hurtful loss. Any loss is hurtful. But she did the numbers. Again, you relied on the expertise of the community.
That's right.
She was the person in the community who had that expertise.
She did.
Ms. Farrell was the person in the community who knew Barry Farms back and forwards.
That's it.
So you went to her. You had Ms. Holly, who knew the community.
Yes.
And was a preserver of finances.
That's right.
So I mean, again, it was built on the strength of individuals and organizations who had the expertise, and not just one group deciding that this is what we should do.
That's right.
You asked your question again.
I was just saying in terms of how that was a pivot for you guys, because the focus, from focusing on the abuse, the physical and emotional abuse, but to recognize that, hey, it's not just that. That's here. Right. How do we change the finances? Right. How do we change the economics?
Well, one, we started mini grants.
Sure did.
We started, we had family support looked differently. We trained all of our family support workers to be able to administer the Denver screening tool. So that meant when you went into the household to meet with a family, not only did you meet with that family about the presenting issue, but you asked the parent, was it okay to deliver that screening tool so that if there was any children in the household who had delay in their growth, we partnered with the Center for Mental Health, Dr. Johanna Furman.
Yes.
And those children were, we were able to catch it early on.
That
So
was
it was more support than it was.
Strength.
Yes.
And it made the families feel, we talked about that earlier today, it made the families feel empowered.
That's right.
That you're not coming in my house to tell me what to do, but you're coming here to help me get to where I want to go. And that's really still the mantra of the organization today. Yeah. It was ingrained in that.
That's so when finances came about. We started doing
financial literacy, helping families buy houses, moving them beyond where they were financially.
The thing I would hope we would have done better is that we would have focused more on education and economics.
I agree.
And that is when we engaged a family and they didn't have the academics, that we steered them in that direction.
That's right.
When we engaged a family and they didn't have the work skills, that we assisted them in getting in their training so they could get work skills. Or if they wanted to do something in the entrepreneur area, that we pushed them in that area. That's the one thing I thought that we could have focused on, and we may have been in a different place right now.
I agree. I think your protege and my predecessor, who I really, really honor, that I worked side by side with for so many years, Perry Moon.
Yes.
You know, him and I, that was really where we honed in on with the families, ensuring that our family support workers came with a different set of skills. And a lot of times that meant hiring from the community.
That's exactly right. I don't know what your percentage is, but at one time it was close to 80%.
Yeah, and it was so dynamic because people understood exactly where the people we were working with, how they lived, their pains, their traumas, and how to get them beyond that.
Absolutely.
It was awesome. It really was. We still have many employees that's doing it. As a matter of fact, and I'm not going to steal too much thunder, but this year we'll be doing something different with some of those anchor employees, really, because we are seeing a shift in terms of individuals that's coming to work here. But I'm not going to steal. This is about you today, so we'll talk about the rest of the organization later. But I just
like hearing what's going on.
Yeah. So in terms of the challenges in your work, I mean, you're still a Ward A resident, Anacostan.
Yes.
Still living here in a house you grew up in yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
But honestly, when you think about it, from where we are, from where we were, and to where we are today, you know, have any of the challenges kind of changed, or what do you see? Have it remained the same? Not the work. I think the Far Southeast Collaborative has grown, but some of the challenges that we face in this community, have you seen some of them change, or is it some of them that we're still dealing with even escalated? What do you think about that?
Well, if we just look at what we were charged with originally, and that is reducing the number of families going into the child welfare system and the number of children, there's been a significant drop.
Goodness. Yes.
In that area.
Yes, all to the point we're out of receivership.
Right.
It worked.
Congratulations.
It worked.
I mean, so, you see that. And then, of course, the community has changed.
Yes.
Barry Farm doesn't exist anymore.
No.
It's flatlined. That's what I like to say.
Yeah, it is.
It's all dirt now.
It is.
There are other communities that don't look the same any longer. We've been integrated with younger people, with people from different cultures, and they are raising different needs.
Call them the creative economy.
A creative economy.
It's a whole group of people that actually look at communities like cities like D.C. And say, hey, I'm going to move there because they have all of these different things that can grow myself out of my own circumstances. So it's a whole theory. Richard Florida started it around the creative class. And it's really looking at cities from a technical perspective, entrepreneurship. More families are coming here with their own business mind, wanting to start their own business, which is critical. And we've always said infusing those kind of opportunities in a community like Ward 8 changes the dynamics, not for the newcomers, but for the people that have been there if we get on board right. So if you had to say, Mr. Gore, do you think Far Southeast is still relevant today?
Absolutely.
Why is
Absolutely. Because of the original, one of the original principles of the collaborative, and that was to keep operating from the voice of the community, You got to keep that
Got to keep
in
it.
place.
Yeah.
And Far Southeast does that.
That's right.
You know, they connect with folks at the community level and hear what the needs are and help the community to address it. Not do it for them,
That's
but
right.
help the community to address those needs. So I think it is still relevant for that reason. I think it's relevant also to help with the integration.
That's right.
You know, to help people, and not just people, but technology.
That's right. That's right.
You
That's
know,
right.
we were looking at screens for like, what, the last 18 months?
Goodness
And
gracious.
so somebody had to teach families how to do that, give them the equipment to do it.
That's
I
right.
remember talking to you, trying to get you to pay attention to a budget, and you said, I got to get these people some computers. so, you know, I mean, you know,
We still
dual
have-
tasking never
That's
stops.
right. That's right. And we still have the responsibility of
So-
planning for the poor.
Yeah,
We
and
have
so,
that responsibility.
I mean, you know, certainly that work of, you know, keeping the voice of the community alive and the responses going and, you know, helping them, the integration of the new cultures and the new businesses, new houses, and then also the integration of technology, how to use it to communicate, but to learn as well. So certainly for that reason, and being responsive.
That's right.
You guys are, you know, I remember that Saturday we spent together. It took me a long time to get her, but you know, I could see how responsive she was. See, wait a minute, let's put a pin right there. Let me go deal with this. Whenever families called, so yeah, I think there is still a need, and I think also to carry on pushing people into the academics.
That's right.
So that they can raise their skills to get better employment or start their own. Pushing people into training so that it prepares them to take on some of the technology jobs that are coming here. You know, so I think certainly.
Good.
And then, you know, it's an employer.
Yeah. God knows we
of
are.
people
Yeah,
who live right
yeah,
in this community.
Yeah, we had a wonderful experience.
Keep it going.
We have, outside of the 70 employees, we recently had a wonderful experience to actually hire about 30 individuals.
Mm-hmm.
It's a contract but to see how many people value coming to work, doing a job, even things, and this is in particular about this vaccination, something that you still may be up in arms about,
Yeah.
but the need is still there. So I agree, Far Southeast still has a role.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you something a little off script. You know, I was really listening intently when you talked about building the community from the community perspective up, and just all across the city. You know, I've seen our leadership change, elected officials change. What do you think happened to us that we've gotten so to the point that the needs or the voices of the people who are in the communities, it doesn't have the same effect that it used to at the top level? I remember years ago, we can call Mayor Barry, and literally he supported us not only with this building, but helping us get an anchor tenant. But being able to have those kind of relationships that we can pick up the phone and what we said matter, because we are the collaborative and we are grassroots and we listen to the residents that are here. But it just seems to me across the city we're changing in terms of what voices matter the most. Do you agree with that, or how do you see the collaborative moving more towards advocating and seeing the voices of the people being heard at the grass top levels?
I do agree with it. The advocacy is not as strong as it was then, because there was a lot of people remember we had a budget hearing, and most of the council members had gone home, and we took, I think, about 10 bus loads of people down to the city
got
council
about 100 people down
and
there.
packed the council. And council members came back. They were home. They came back to the hearing.
We had shirts on that said, "We support the collaboratives."
And I don't know if that kind of advocacy exists anymore, that you get the whole community rallied around an issue. And it wasn't, you know, we talk about the people at the community level who, again, that voice has to drive the work. But then you had the law advocates.
Yep.
You had the Institute for Social Policy, Social
That's
Change.
right,
I
that's
forgot
right.
her name.
Yep. Judy Meiser.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You had
yeah,
all
yeah.
those people
Yep.
on one team.
That's right.
Saying to the district, "Oh no, this is what you have to do."
That's right.
It's not that we're giving you a choice. This is what you have to
That's
do.
right.
And I think that you said it. The relationships aren't as strong any longer. And one of the things that we had encouraged early on was that in every ward, you knew all your ANC
That's
commissioners.
Right. That's right.
You knew all your city council
That's
people.
Right.
You knew the people who sat on special committees. You had each collaborative had a relationship with them. And so that when we went citywide,
That's right.
we had representation from every ward at a political level, at the community level, at the ANC level, at the grassroots community level, at the school level. And one of the things I don't see as much, and that is at the directors level, the advocacy from the group.
No, I
at
agree.
the directors level.
I agree. I agree.
We don't make our political leaders feel uncomfortable anymore.
That's right. We don't do enough of it.
At a risk, they sort of tell us what they're going to do. And it used to be the other way around.
That's
We
right.
said, no, here's the data. We know what's going on. We know what needs to be done. And here's the problem, and we gave them a solution. We didn't leave it to them to come up with a solution. We always presented a solution to them. And I don't think that energy is there anymore. Everybody's working in their community, doing things in their community. But when it comes, the issues are pretty much the same.
That's it.
So if we surface those issues together and came in as one voice, I think that needs to happen to get the attention of the political leaders.
And I think, in part too, I'm going to give you an opportunity to give some final comments. I really think in part it has a lot to do with something that you and I have talked about extensively, and that's the diversification of your funding sources.
Yes.
One of the things that happened to the collaborative, and again, as you were reminiscing and sharing, I remember those meetings. Right? I've been around that long. Wasn't working particularly here, but been around in this Ward 8 community when those meetings was being held, and the Dorothy Farrells was at the table. Yeah. And one of the things that's really different, at that time, we were primarily focused on the child welfare work with Child and Family Services. As we grew out and recognized that there was other things that we needed to address, we started reaching out, applying for different applications, and the money was rolling in. Yes. But unfortunately, it made us very dependent. I mean, we're still very heavily dependent on local funding to do a lot of the work. And, when you sit in this seat, you know it better than I do. More often than not, you feel compelled not to ruffle too many feathers, because if you do, that's a couple of jobs. And at the end of the day, so that whole balance that you're constantly making. And I agree. I think before, God decides to move me on, one of the things that I want to see happen is half of our resources. We're close to a $10 million budget now.
All right.
And half of those resources have to come from other entities. So that we can have a voice, we can feel that we can speak truth to power. But more often than not, when nonprofits like ours are heavily reliant, you have to, kind of tread the water lightly, being able to say what you need to say, but in a way that you don't damage the people that you serve. So for me, that's an ongoing challenge, because you know me, I'm pretty mouthy. So
but
I work on that a lot.
The relationships were built where even your adversarials felt that there was a relationship there.
Yeah, it was a
so
mutual
I could take a hit.
That's right.
And continue to work. And not come back and punish you.
Yeah.
Because we all are working for the betterment of the community. So those relationships were built where there may have been disagreement in practice, but in terms of getting to the same goal, we were able to all synchronize ourselves around the same goal, that we want to improve the community, and that but we came at it from different places, and so sometimes there was a tug of war going on there between the agency and the community. But we reached a point where there was work together. Yeah. We were doing this work together.
Yeah.
And I think that can happen again for sure.
Yeah, I see it happening. I think it's right what you said. I have a funny story, and I don't know if you remember this. So I know I'm dating us both, but back when you were the president, and I remember I was with Perry, and we had a meeting, and you met us there, and at that time, I think you were down at ARE, and you met us there, and he was a council member at the time, but Barry, and I think it was Mr. Gray, he came over to you and he said something. He was like, Tommy, you're going to go at it in this meeting, but at the end of the meeting, we're going to make this thing happen. And I sat back, and me in my attaché case or something, blue suit or something, falling behind you guys. Mm-hmm. But I said to myself, he just said they're going to argue in front of everybody else. But at the end, they're going to get what they want. Yeah. And you guys did. Yeah. And after it was over, you shook his hand, he shook your hand, and it was needed. And it was interesting how it happened, but a lot of that was because of the relationship. And he had to ruffle the feathers, right? And you guys knew it. And it didn't change anything. You got walked out of that door, and you continue to do the work. And Far Southeast got funded the money we deserve. And the rest is history.
Prairie Moon, Prairie was quiet, but he was strategic. He said, Tom, we need to have the money follow the need.
That's right.
So it shouldn't be funded by, this is my budget, fund me. The money, wherever the greatest need is, where the most of the money should go. And so we presented that.
The whole argument. I remember.
And it was a tough, because think of it, if you were in another part of the city, you felt your budget needed to be funded at the level you felt it should have been funded at. But then you got another group of people saying, well, the money needs to follow the need.
That's right.
But the need is 40% in this community, 30% in this community, 20% in this community. Whatever the total dollar amount is, 40% needs to go here.
That's right.
30% needs to go there. And so everybody wasn't comfortable with that.
Yep.
But we did it.
Yep.
Some people weren't comfortable, but we did it, and we still worked together. There was some bad, hard feelings, but we got over it.
We did, and we did the work.
But, that relationship piece is very important. I mean, you think about people like Vince Gray, for example, who would work all night on a project. He really wrote the family support
center model. Yeah.
Well, what was the one where we issued the money?
Yeah, that was family support centers.
It was the mini grants.
Right. Okay.
Remember, he wrote the process for the mini grants.
He did.
He wrote that process.
Yeah.
And then Susan Zock Smith.
Yep.
And Vera Johnson.
That's right. Vera's still here.
You had some other people. Gene Kinlow. All your personnel policies, procedures, your bylaws, all of that stuff, he loves. Yeah. And he used to have us in meetings 3 and 4 hours, putting that stuff together. Yeah. Job descriptions. Personnel policies. Articles of incorporation, bylaws.
Wow.
And then you have Brenda Jones, who could speak anywhere to anybody.
That's right.
I know I'm going to mess up somebody's name and not say it who deserves a lot of credit, but there was just so many operatives who had, again, operating from their strength.
That's right.
To make the body of the whole better.
That's right.
And that concept, I think even though there were individuals who shined in that, there were groups who shined in it as well.
And even organizations that were developed as a result of that work. And I remember the whole family support center model, though. Yeah. We believed in pushing the work to the community, and it was a mantra. It was, and we literally, we funded so many organizations that are still able to do this work as a result of the capacity building work that Far Southeast has done. Until this day, 90% of our resources still go directly to the community.
That's all right.
90% of the resources. And we're going to keep doing that because that's the work that you guys started.
You believe in that.
I do. I believe in it to the core. That's the work that you all started. And it literally is the blood I breathe, the blood that runs through my body. I don't even think there's a time that I'm talking about this that I don't talk about and remember. I mean, it's almost like it's implanted in me to understand that this is not about making more salaries, making people rich, but it's about changing the entire framework of this community so that they can be like Ward 1, be like Ward 2, and feel empowered enough to say, hey, this is where I live. I'm proud of where I live. I own property where I live. My business is around the corner. I see it that way. I see it, and I see the collaborative being an anchor, continuing that effort in this community. It means so much to me. So in closing,
let me ask you this before
sure,
we close.
you know me, you could do this for hours.
Have you created? What was really dynamic when you were the director of outreach?
Yes, yes, engagement,
so have you
community
created
engagement.
That person.
Like so look, I'm trying, right? We got a new team.
I thought it was 3 of you at one time.
You know what I think is funny? I came down to see you. I think I had to do something with your team, and you introduced me at that time. You was like, Dion Rita, deputy director at Farsight. I was like, I'm not. That's not what I am. And he was like, you should be. You know what you're doing. And you actually created the opportunity for me to go to Perry and say, hey, look, this is what I feel like I should be doing. But I really believe in the work of this organization. I don't think I've ever worked anywhere and have as much passion around believing in this. And it's really based on the history. And I think one of the things as I'm listening to you talk, we're going to have to share with our staff. I mean, I know we have this podcast, but we're going to have to let the staff really hear this annually because it changes how we see.
Get it?
Listen, we taping this, so we got it now.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So even going into this new building.
In another year, some of this stuff is going.
Yeah, you still look the same, sir. But, you know, even going into this new building and what that meant for, you know, Mrs. Harley, you know, Mr. Kinlow. Yeah. And one of the things that I've asked, and I know they're tired, but they have to be emeritus board members. And, you know, we're going to do a whole wall to talk about the history in that new building so we won't forget, you know, where this work started and the reason why we're even here today. And many of us, like myself, never thought in a million years I'll spend 27 years of my life in Ward 8, you know, focusing primarily on looking at how do we make a change and a difference. So, for me, it is. I love it. And thank you guys for the opportunity.
I like watching you.
So let me ask you this question in closing and give you an opportunity if there's anything else you want to share with our audience as they listen to this podcast. You know, you've stayed involved in Far Southeast. You're even a board member in another collaborative. But is it something that you will want to say in terms of this history and how we've moved from 1996 to where we are in 2021 as an organization? Is there anything you will want to leave us with?
I would just say that don't lose that principle of operating from the voices of the community. You know, allow the community to continue to guide your work. When you get to the point where you feel that you have the answers, you say, I know what they need, and you create, it's not going to work well. But when the community shares with you, this is what we need.
That's right.
Create.
That's right.
From their voices, you know, it is a true response to the need.
That's it.
Jesse Jackson used to say that there won't be any change until the victims lead the revolution.
All right.
You know, and so one of my proud moments was that, you know, I was born in, I grew up in foster care. I was in an orphanage, and then I became the chairman of a collaborative council.
Sure did.
So, you know, that for me is I'm hoping that it inspired some of the people who were in foster care when I was in foster care and who was in the orphanage when I was in the orphanage. I'm hoping that that inspired some other folks and so it felt good sitting in some of those meetings and sharing stuff that people didn't know why it was coming from me. It was coming from me because I had experienced it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I would just say continue to hear the voices of the folks, hire people from the community, and hire people who enjoy the work.
That's right.
It's easy to do this when you enjoy it.
That's the truth.
And when you can talk about it, that family had success, that family had success, and feel good about it, you know, I think. And then the last thing I would say is you've got to figure out a way to improve the advocacy.
That's right. I agree.
The advocacy
I agree.
To the political leaders, you know, you've got to figure out a way to improve that, to help them. And part of it is educating them again.
That's right.
Around the work you do.
And
so I just thank you for the opportunity.
Oh,
I'm
Mr.
glad
Gore,
that you're leading the collaborative now.
Thank you.
In a way I can support.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm right up the street.
There you go. Thank you for being a trailblazer in this work. Honestly, you're one of the people that honestly, I say to myself, now what would Mr. Gore do? How would he respond to this situation? And I'm blessed to be able to have you in my corner, and this organization is blessed to have you as one of our, not only just a mentor to me, but more importantly, a resident in this community that's going to keep us on the straight and narrow. So I appreciate you. Love you so very much, brother.
Likewise.
Thank you for your time again, and looking forward to when we actually have this groundbreaking. Well, we already did the groundbreaking, that grand opening of this building, that you really put forth the pen to paper to make sure we had a space here that belongs to the Far Southeast Collaborative in the Anacostia community. So thank you so very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for allowing me to come and talk with you about the good work that you all are doing in the Far Southeast community.
All right. Appreciate you.